Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
USS John Paul Jones is a 9,000-ton American guided missile destroyer. For some reason, guided missile destroyers are called DDGs. Now, this ship, it's around a 25-year-old, 27-year-old ship in fact. This ship floated into the vicinity of Lakshadweep Islands. When you say vicinity, then it is not in India's territorial waters, which is 12 nautical miles. For simplicity of understanding, 12 nautical miles is just over 22 kilometers. Precisely, it's 22.224 kilometers or 13.8 miles. That is territorial waters. Nobody can come in there without taking your consent. But any country's exclusive economic zone, EEZ, is 200 nautical miles. 200 nautical miles then is equal to 370.4 kilometers. So it's quite a large area in the seas. You could get lost very easily, but this US Navy destroyer wasn't lost where it was. It got into about 131 nautical miles away from the Indian coast. So it was well within the Indian exclusive economic zone. Now this caused an immediate kerfuffle. This story was broken, in fact, yesterday by Abhigyan. I think that is the correct pronunciation of his name, although it's spelt like Abhijnan, but Abhigyan Raj at The Diplomat, who spotted this story that an American destroyer had come into India's EEZ. Apparently without informing India. And if there were any doubts left, the US Navy's 7th Fleet issued a statement today that this ship had come into Indian exclusive economic zone to assert its rights of FONOPS, that is freedom of navigation operations. Since we are talking about military and about the navies and sailors, be prepared for a bunch of acronyms today. So FONOPS, freedom of navigation operations. Now this led to consternation in India. I used the word kerfuffle earlier. Now let me take it one step up and say consternation. The consternation was Americans are allies. They are holding exercises with you. You are setting up the Quad with them in Indo-Pacific, which is precisely the part of real estate where this ship has come in a way challenging Indian authority. And then the Americans, the 7th Fleet, has the gumption to issue a statement saying that they had gone in there without any notification to Government of India or to Indian authorities. In fact, if you read the exact statement, the 7th Fleet statement, it says it went 130 nautical miles inside India's exclusive economic zone without requesting India's consent, consistent with international law. What that means, I will tell you in a minute. Basically, the consternation on the Indian side was that, look, the Americans had come in, they could have told us they are our friends, we are strategic partners, we are part of the Quad, the same ships exercise together, they exchange signals, messages, they are building interoperability. So what is the Americans doing now? Thumbing their noses at us like this and then making a public statement about it. Now, the Indian government spokesman has said, look, this is an innocent thing, this is not such a big deal. People can come in like this, and America is a friendly country. I'm now adding this stuff, I'm elaborating his statement, not all his words, don't put these into his mouth. But he said that this looks like a message to China. The message to China means what? So that is where we come to the cluttered part of it, which is the international law of the seas. Now, this law goes back to 1982. India ratified the law in 1995. America has not ratified the law as yet, although they accept the law in its essence in most areas, except in one area, which is the the authority to explore for mineral deposits in the seabed on high seas. But that besides, the Americans celebrate these United Nations laws. These laws are called UNCLOS, UNCLOS. I told you to be prepared for some acronyms today. That is United Nations Convention on Law of the Seas. Now, this law India has ratified, China is a signatory. While ratifying this law, India laid a condition. While they were ratifying the law, India said that any military vessels coming into its exclusive economic zone will require to inform India. So they will need to inform India as long as they are innocent military movements, which means nothing is being done by those vessels which might be of any military implication. But the Chinese, on the other hand, made it much tougher. The Chinese said nobody can come into their exclusive economic zone without their consent. And then the Chinese did the next thing that they've been doing. They've been conjuring up islands anywhere in the seas, especially South China Sea. They go and dump sand, create an island, and then they take a protractor and they say 12 nautical miles around it is my territorial waters and 200 nautical miles around it is my exclusive economic zone, and you can't come in there without checking with me. So Chinese have taken it to a different level altogether. So American ships also carry out maneuvers in those waters to challenge China and to make the point that they have the freedom of navigation. So they also have been doing this in Indian exclusive economic zones for a long time. In fact, if you go to the websites of Department of Defense, US Navy, US State Department, you will find that they've been doing it to make the point that freedom of navigation is universal, that no country can superimpose its own rules on top of UNCLOS. Now, India has superimposed one set of rules saying you inform us, but it says definitely that you let us know if you do any military activity like any exercise involving the use of explosives, for example. If you go again to the American defense websites, you will find, on the Pentagon website, you will find that these statements are made every year by the US Navy, that these are the countries that have restrictions beyond what is provided for in UNCLOS. Now, this is something that I know courtesy Dhruva Jaishankar, who is a member of the leading think tank ORF and himself a formidable strategic scholar based in Washington, because he put out this note from the US statements. Please see that on our screen. He has also shared with us the link for a paper, a Brookings paper in 2017, June 2017, which I am sharing with you, the full paper, you can read it, written by Iskandar Rahman on India, China and the different conception of maritime boundaries by both India and China. So if you read that, you can understand the nuance, that what does China mean when it superimposes some rules over UNCLOS after expecting it, and what is it that India means when it superimposes its rules. So technically the Americans violated that rule that India has imposed on top of UNCLOS to make the point that no country has the right to make any rules on top of an international convention which the Americans haven't ratified. So what has this done? This has first of all made Americans look like dadas and bullies, which they are. Second, it's given people the chance to say, "Arey, ye to hamare dost hain, et tu, why are you doing this to me? You could have told me." But the American argument is, if I had told you, then I am not making the point that freedom of navigation is universal within the laws, within the international UN laws, and we will not accept any other country's laws. So it's a message also for China. That can be the interpretation on the Indian side. Now, this incident, now, we will have clarity in a day or two. Today is Friday, but America will be working today. So we'll see. Either we'll see a clarification from the American side, or there'll be a silence, which in that case will be open to interpretation. One, that maybe there will be one interpretation that the Americans have spoken quietly to their Indian counterparts and said, listen, this is a message to China, don't take too unkindly to it. Or it could be that somebody made a mistake, because one principle I followed in my life in many situations, because as a reporter you see many situations which look like big conspiracies. So a good principle I followed, and I found that 9 out of 10 I've gone right with that principle, that don't jump into imagining a conspiracy for what can be explained fully by stupidity. So lots of stupidities happen. So we don't know what's happened in this case. Maybe we will have clarity by Monday, but we know that this will not become a very big incident. or a big diplomatic cause of friction between the two countries because there is much too much at stake. But at the same time, because it's the 7th fleet, this is the year of the 50th anniversary of the liberation of Bangladesh. That is when America had sent the 7th fleet to try and save Pakistan in East Pakistan, or at least save the rest of Pakistan, West Pakistan, from being invaded by India after it was finished with East Pakistan. So 7th fleet, Indian Ocean, coming into Indian economic zone, this brings back the most visceral and deep-set anti-Americanism in India. Now, this anti-Americanism in the Indian mind is deep-set on the one hand, but also very sitting behind a very thin skin. So it sits behind a very thin skin and then goes deep into our hearts. So this is just the kind of provocation that was needed to say, "Arey, American log, हमें 7th fleet बेच के बचा रहे हो, डरा रहे हो." Indira Gandhi नहीं डरी थी. Indira Gandhi wasn't scared in 1971, 50 years ago. So you think 50 years later we are weaker? We are actually stronger. But I would say hold your horses. There was a Cold War on in 1971. We were on the other side of the Americans. We were allies of the Soviet Union. We had signed a treaty of peace, friendship and cooperation, as it's called. It was a security treaty with the Soviet Union. We were on one side in the Cold War and America was an adversary. Today, America is a partner. So please don't go back to those visceral 1971 feelings, because it is known that anti-Americanism is very fashionable. It is fashionable in the left and the right. In fact, a lot of the responses I am seeing to this are not coming from the intellectual left. They are coming from the intellectual and political right. So hang on, figure out what is going on. All I will tell you at this point is that USS John Paul Jones, particularly for those nerds who might be interested in naval ships, frankly, most nerds will know what it is. This ship is named by Captain John Paul Jones, who is a figure, who is a famous, heroic figure. And this ship's motto is quite telling. This ship's motto is a line that Captain John Paul Jones was famous for. That's the line that has stuck to him and to his memory. And that line I will read to you. That is the ship's motto. "I wish to have no connection with any ship that does not sail fast, or I intend to go in harm's way." So this ship, true to its motto, has sailed into the harm's way, not by way of fighting a battle or getting into hostilities, but just stirring some kind of trouble in the Indian mind and causing a little bit of a diplomatic incident. This was pointed out early this morning by Admiral Arun Prakash, who is one of our most respected former Navy chiefs. He also won a Veer Chakra while on a secondment to the IAF, carrying out hunter bombing missions over Islamabad, over Rawalpindi airport. So he in the morning said, this is odd, that it could be that they are coming into these EEZs to make a point, but for them to issue a statement looks like it's odd, and it was avoidable. And that led to a lot of reaction from the Indian side. As I see it, I think the inclination is to put it down. But having said that, we have to also understand that India and America have many areas of agreement, but also many areas of disagreement. And that will carry on like this. I mean, this is one side of the Indian coastline, but you go to the other. Look at Iran, for example. Just next month in May, India will be making the Chabahar port in Iran operational. America places sanctions on anybody doing business with Iran. So nations will act in their own interest. So I know people like to say that there are no permanent friends or enemies in international relations, but permanent interests. I would modify that and say there are no permanent friends and enemies, or there are no total friends and enemies. This is not like the Hindi movies, "मैं तुम्हारे लिए अपनी जान दूंगा." Nobody gives their life for you in international relations. Countries act in their self-interest. So there are no permanent friends or enemies. There are no permanent interests either. They are always shifting interests, because nations' interests shift. They don't always remain the same, and they all have to make these adjustments. If you see the American situation, you will find a lot of America's trade barriers, a lot of America's trade related sanctions, etc., are actually imposed first against countries that happen to be their allies, and India does that also. So this is par for the course. I will not lose much sleep over it, but this was a good opportunity for us to try and understand one fascinating part of international relations, which is built around the international laws of the sea. In fact, when I was reading up on this, I also remembered an article that I had read in the New York Times 2 weeks back, and which I shared in my weekly newsletter, Editor's Choice, which you will get in your mailbox if you are a subscriber. That's one of our subscriber benefits. And this is an article written by written by a scholar, Philip Sands, who is a professor at University College of London, but also a counsel, and he's worked with many Asian countries on their maritime law claims and problems. And he wrote this long article about something that at least I knew nothing about, that Britain now has a colony, still has a colony in the Indian Ocean called BIOT, British Indian Ocean Territories. And how did I discover this territory? Because I got an email from somebody offering some internet services, some technology services for our website, which was one of those routine marketing emails. But I was struck by the fact that the email address said, the website said something.io. And I said, what is IO? I know that IN is India, you know, something is US, something is Pakistan, something is whatever. But what is IO? There is no country called IO. So I Googled and I figured that IO stands for Indian Ocean Territories. Indian Ocean Territories are actually British Indian Ocean Territories. British Indian Ocean Territories are the kind of last surviving colony that Britain has in the world, and it's in Indian Ocean. It is a group of about 55 to 60 islands, because some of them with global warming go up and down, about 500 kilometers south of Maldives. So not that far from India, not that far from where this American ship had come in Lakshadweep. Because if you see that part of the Indian Ocean, you first have the Lakshadweep islands, then you have the Maldives archipelago, and then as you go further south, you get this archipelago called Chagos Islands. Now, Chagos Islands for 150 years belonged to Mauritius. In 1965, Lyndon Johnson, that was the peak of the Cold War, Lyndon Johnson, US President, he persuaded the British, his allies, that while you are decolonizing, the whole world is decolonizing, you will give up Mauritius will become free, but don't let them take Chagos Islands back. Why? Because Chagos Islands were sitting in the middle of nowhere in Indian Ocean, in a vast expanse of waters connecting all the various parts of the world. And as things would turn out, soon enough, Americans had started building a base in one of these islands. That island is called Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia is a small island, 44 square kilometers, but the British leased it to the Americans. That lease expires in 2036, and the Americans have built a huge base there, from which they've been operating in all kinds of situations, including the Gulf Wars. And at that point, India had protested about that base, and that is when India used to talk about Indian Ocean being a zone of peace. Now that has now changed, because Indian Ocean, from being a zone of peace, keeping all the superpowers out of there, India is now part of a superpower grouping in Indian Ocean. But the fact is that American interest is there. And this article explains to you, in fact, Professor Philip Sands has also advised Mauritius government in its claims before the International Maritime Tribunal and International Court of Justice to get control of these islands back, that they won all the cases, and yet both America and Britain have tossed these verdicts and they are not giving these back. To give America comfort, Mauritius has even said that, look, we are happy to lease Diego Garcia to you for 99 years. Your British lease is expiring at 2036. That is 15 years from now, but Americans have still not accepted it. So an ironical point is made out that, look at you Americans, look at you British, both of you make statements all the time that you adhere to by the UN Convention of Laws of the Sea, Law of the Sea. You want China to adhere to it. You don't like China to make claims on this, claims on that, based on history, tradition, etc., etc. 300 years ago, our ancestors owned this place, owned that place, and now I built this island. All this area is around me. While both of you, America and Britain, are in complete violation of the same maritime laws vis-a-vis Little Island. And just as a footnote, among the countries that support Mauritius's position that these islands belong to it and should be given back to it, and the International Arbitration Tribunal has actually determined the borders, maritime borders between Maldives and Mauritius in a way that Chagos now in 2019, after the order of the tribunal, ratified by UN General Assembly, which both UK and US opposed. They have UN maps now list Chagos Islands as a part of Mauritius. So this is one story that came up in conjunction with this, and I thought I will tell you this because this also tells you superpower or big power hypocrisy. कोई दूध का धुला हुआ नहीं है. Nobody is a saint. This is a world of जिसकी लाठी उसकी भैंस. At one level might is right, but when you say we want everybody to follow the rule of the laws and freedom of the seas, then everybody has to look inside in terms of what they've been doing as well.